saying congratulations on this film, mate. I had a chance to sit down and watch it, and I absolutely loved it. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. It's a labour of love, that's for sure. And then we actually shot that during COVID, so it was probably the most difficult shoot or difficult film to make, considering the circumstances.
So we'll touch on that in a little bit. I just wanted to go right back to the start for you. As you said, this is a labour of love. Where did the journey and the idea start for you with this film?
Okay, so I was actually I was in Sydney promoting Gateway, and I had a meeting. This is back in 2018. I had a meeting or caught up with a couple of writers over there, Dane Millard and Adam Enslow, and they loved the film Gateway, and they wanted to work with me on something. They pitched a few things, and at that time it didn't quite work for me what they had, but we decided we'll work together on something in the future because they're both talented writers, and probably about a month or two later, we're doing a few phone calls and emails and things like that. We decided on a home invasion movie, like an Australian home invasion film. And at the time I said, look, that has, there are some very strong home invasion films like The Strangers, The Purge, Panic Room, Funny Games, even Firewall, comparison forward.
Yeah.
So those films, they're all quality films, and that's hard to top. So I sort of said, look, whatever we do, it's got to be fresh. We have to take a fresh approach on that, and they agreed with that. And so I actually wrote an initial outline. I had this idea of this family that go on vacation, and there's a home invasion, and I had the idea that the mother of the house, the mother of the family, has some sort of special skill.
Yeah.
But we hadn't quite nailed down what that was. But for myself, I'm a little bit skeptical when I've seen some of the other action films with where you have, for instance, a 5'5" woman taking on 10 muscled mercenaries and taking them all out using kung fu or taekwondo or boxing or whatever. To me, it just doesn't seem realistic.
Yep.
So I thought, and it would be so ridiculous because initially we were thinking, what if she's a martial arts expert? It's like, well, come on. It's like, that's been done, and also it's, again, not realistic. So what is realistic is that if a woman's in that situation and she has a skill, whether it be she's good with, good with nunchucks, or she's great with with knives or something, or throwing axes, then that would be a skill that would actually even the playing field. So that was kind of key to the whole concept, that she was an ordinary mum that just had a special skill, which turns out to be archery. We decided upon archery, and that was kind of the outline. I sort of outlined that, and then we had a fairly solid outline. It took about 3-4 months to because I would send it to them and they would make some notes, send it back to me. It was bouncing around. And then I wrote the first draft of the script, and then I was bouncing that script back and forth. So this is going on from 2018 right through to 2021. So I wrote a draft, Dane wrote a draft, Adam wrote a draft. We reached a point around that time. Tim Maddox came on board as a co-producer with myself, and obviously he's got a lot of knowledge, filmmaking knowledge. He's produced other films, and he too was of the same mind that the script wasn't quite there, just wasn't strong enough. So that's when I reached out to Andrew Slattery, who'd actually sent me a sample of his work before, and I said, have a read, let me know your thoughts. And then he came back with some notes and some great thoughts, and I discussed with the guys and also with Tim, and it's like, hey, we should get Andrew to write the next draft.
Yep.
So he wrote the next draft, definitely elevated it to another level. And then obviously that was back in probably late 2020. And then I wrote a further couple of drafts, really just fine tuning it and tweaking it before we went into production on the movie.
It sounded like in the beginning you were quite hesitant to make a home invasion movie because there were so many out there. What was it that finally got you over that hesitation to make one?
Yeah, no, that's exactly how I felt. What got me over it was like in all my films, I always like to have an interesting twist to the story. There's a hook in there, something you haven't seen before. And the one thing that I hadn't seen before in a home invasion movie was where the hero, or heroine in this case, completely turns the tables on the bad guys and invades their home.
Yep.
So, we've got a bunch of ex-soldiers have conducted a home invasion, they've tied up the family, done all these things, and the mother, who's she's a pro archer, manages to take out one or two bad guys, and then it doesn't end there. She goes after them in their lair. So she goes to their home, invades their home, and starts taking them out in their home. So to me, it was like, hang on, this is like a reverse home invasion.
Yep.
So that's what got that. That's when that idea kind of crystallized. I'm like, right, I've not seen that before. Let's go make that.
Definitely. Now, you mentioned earlier that this was a very, very difficult shoot because of COVID. Tell us a little bit about some of the things you faced when you were filming during that period and what made it such a tough shoot.
Well, the first thing is that we never knew if we were going to be shut down. That's the first thing. So, you would literally go, well, you check your phones in the morning to see if the state was to be shut down, which basically means we couldn't continue to shoot the film. So that's the first thing. Second thing was that obviously we all had to wear masks and PPE and all that sort of stuff. That's fine, and everyone went through that, and that was tough for everyone. It wasn't an easy period for anyone. But then when you get to set, you had to have all of us had to have COVID tests to make sure we weren't positive. That happened about a week before, and obviously, luckily, we're all negative. And then when you're shooting, when you're making the film, and you've got your face mask on, all the crew are masked up. You're under the lights because you've got the lights. Like you've got a scene set up, like for instance a warehouse, and you've got the lights set up. It's getting kind of hot in there, and there were no fans, and you got your mask on, which is a bit stifling. It's very uncomfortable.
Yep.
And even like as a director, relaying instructions and saying to an actor, suggesting like an adjustment. Well, they can't even see my face. I mean, they can just see my eyes.
Yep.
So you don't have those. I remember reading an article that a lot of the subconscious cues that you pick up from people's faces, you can't do that when they're masked.
Yep.
So that was one complication. The other thing was that eventually, we were 2 days in. We had a beautiful schedule, and then bang, we got shut down. So everything stops. Now, as you know, with a film, your first AD schedules a production and says, okay, on this day we're going to go to this house, we're going to shoot this scene here. The next day we're going to this forest. The next day we're going to a psychologist's office. So you've got it all mapped out, and quite often you've got to hire those locations. So you put down you pay for the location. You've got a specific time, and when you're shut down, then there's the scramble. Like, well, can we go into that location on that day next week? It's like, no, I'm sorry, we can't. So you can imagine for the first AD what a nightmare that was, rescheduling everything.
Yep.
And we were lucky we had flexible, the people that we're working with were flexible, but it did create, like making any film, and I've said this before, there seems to be a misconception that making a film is like a party. I can tell you it's not.
Yeah.
The only party happens on a rap party, but when you're making a film, it's like you've got to be, professional and efficient, and you're there to, and when you're on a low budget and a tight schedule, 4 weeks to shoot this film, you don't have time to stuff around. You've got to get in there and get as many setups done as possible, as efficiently as possible. Make sure the actors on their A game, and make sure everyone's going in the same direction. So, so making a film, probably there's 10% fun and 90% hard work. Throw on top of that COVID, then a shutdown, messes up the production schedule, and then for me, I was having trouble sleeping at night because I was like, well, shit, because your brain's ticking over for the next day's shoot.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, are we even going to be able to shoot? Am I going to wake up tomorrow and we've been shut down for another 3 days? So it was, I think, for myself and my co-producer, Tim Maddox, we both were very anxious during the shoot. It was very, very tough psychologically on both of us. And I have heard of I know of another film, I won't say which one, but these poor guys, they actually, half the crew, so some of the cast got COVID, and they were shut down, I believe, for 3 weeks, and by the time they got back to set to shoot, some of the actors' contracts had expired, and they had to move on to other films.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So they lost some big cast members, which meant the whole film had to grind to a halt, and they didn't finish those scenes or finish the film, I think, for about even 9 months later.
Wow. Yeah.
So that was what we were fearing. That's the nightmare scenario. And of course, the nightmare scenario is one of your actors actually gets extremely ill and can't come back to. I mean, that's the worst. But when you break up a production, you've got to stop it and then restart it. It could just be, it can be a disaster. So fortunately, we were lucky and we got through it. But yeah, it was definitely a difficult process.
Well, the end result for you is an absolutely amazing film, and part of the thing that makes that amazing is your cast. Tell us a little bit about how you went with casting this film. Did you have people in mind when you were writing those drafts, or did you just go with a casting agent in the end?
I pretty much no. So when I'm writing a script, I don't think of actors. I don't think of specific actors. When I was first starting out writing scripts, my first film back in 2007 when I wrote it, that's Crush. I did make that kind of mistake of going, oh right, well I'm going to have such and such top actor in the film, and the problem is you never know if you're going to get them. Yep. And there's the myth of, I know if I write this script and it's tailored for Brad Pitt, when he reads it, he's going to go, I'm going to do that film. And it doesn't work like that, right? It's rare. It's extremely rare unless you're an A-list director working for Marvel. Otherwise, forget it.
Yep.
So for me, it was just more about developing the characters and filling out their backstory and making them interesting characters for the audience to sort of get to know. In terms of the casting process, once we had kind of locked our shooting script and we were starting pre-production, in fact, no, just before we started pre-production, this is again Tim and I were looking for an actress to board as the lead actress and also lead actor. So we sourced them before we started pre-production, and that's where we locked in. We were fortunate to lock in Gillian for the lead and Luke Ford. So Gillian Alexi and Luke Ford. So Gillian is obviously an Australian from Perth, and she was in McLeod's Daughters, had left Australia for LA and been very successful over there. She's been in shows like The Americans, CSI, NCIS, a whole bunch of shows, like in dozens of shows. And she even was the main character. She even had her own show The Outsiders, where I think there were 2 seasons and she was one of the lead characters.
Yep.
But when COVID hit, family decided to retreat back to Perth. And when I found out that she was available, I'm like, well, we've got to send her the script and hope that she likes it. So fortunately, she did.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So she really dug the script. And then around that time also, I was looking for a quality lead male actor, playing the father of the family. And there are about 5 or 6 actors that I've been watching their career flourish. And there's one actor I've always wanted to work with, which is Luke Ford, because I remember him from Animal Kingdom, just absolute cracker of a film. And I thought, God, that guy's such a good actor. And then I saw him in The Mummy 3, and then he's been in other films, The Black Balloon. And I thought he's very versatile, and obviously he's obviously older, gotten older since Animal Kingdom. So I reached out to him or to his agent, and the agent sent the script to him, and he read it, and he loved it, and he was on board. So once we had the 2 lead actors, they're like the anchors for the production, and then it's like, okay, now we need to fill out the rest of the cast. But generally, I always do that in a pre-production.
Well, everyone comes together so well on this film as well. Like you said, Gillian and Luke are so well together. What was your first thoughts when you first started working with them on set? Because they all seem to come together so well, and like you said, they had such a powerful background of performances going into the film as well.
Well, the first time, because we had Luke and Gillian were offered their roles. I did not audition them, mainly because, it's borderline insulting for those guys with their extensive repertoire of films. And I've seen their performances. I know they're great actors, and I know they can deliver. So that wasn't an issue. I knew that they would do well. But of course, there's always that nervousness. Maybe they won't. The other actors, they all audition for their roles. But the real test actually comes when you do these, even before rehearsals, when you do we did a script reading quite early on, I think 2 weeks before production, with all the cast. And it was just mesmerizing. Like I was just like, holy shit, at the end I'm like, bloody hell, this is incredible. Like everyone was just on point. So that's when I thought, okay, I think we could make something really special here. Then obviously I spent time with each of the actors, doing some rehearsals, spending time with them, and also discussing their thoughts on the character. And all of them, they're all asking, okay, tell me more about, for instance, Ryan Panizza, who plays Kane. He wanted to know more backstory. Where does Kane come from? What's his experience? And that's where he built the character of Kane, who's essentially a complete psychopath. But that when you sit down, that's the most valuable time before you start shooting, is discussing all of this with the actors. Then also doing some rehearsals where you have, for instance, Alexandra Nell and Ryan Panizza, Kane and Reed doing some scenes together, working together, discussing things. So you try to do as much as you can before you start shooting. And so the actors feel comfortable, and they've got a good understanding of where the character's coming from. And then of course you pray that holds for the shoot.
Definitely. Well, it certainly did throughout the film. Like I said, this film absolutely blew me away, and people have been asking me what it's like, and I've been telling them it's a film that they have to see. So I guess to wrap up, what would you like to say to people out there who are thinking about going and watching this film?
Well, firstly, thank you for that lovely thumbs up. I really appreciate that. Well, this is an Australian action film, action thriller, and there's not many of them. We don't. That's not something we really make. So it's not a traditional kind of Aussie drama. I think my thought is that there are many American films out there, and a lot of them are very good. There's no doubt about that. But it's nice to see an Australian film that where you've got it's 100% Australian. We've got these Australian actors that just are so good in their roles, and I definitely will say that it'll keep them entertained. And there's a few plot twists in there. It's not it's a pretty lean action thriller, but there's some nice twists and turns. And I think it's kind of you've got to support as the Screen Producers Association is saying. You've got to go out. Please go out and see Australian films. It'd be great if your listeners will go and watch my film. It's going to be playing at Reading Cinemas. Support Australian films, and if you can't make my film, go watch another Australian film. But please support Australian films, because our industry is tiny compared to the US and US industry and overseas industries, and we just need all the support we can get to for our films to succeed, and for our actors to sort of to help grow their careers.